Hi and welcome to Lecture 9. In this lecture we'll talk about how to deploy to Heroku and how to enable SSL. So as we discussed in Course 1 Module 3, we have to change our gem file before deploying to Heroku because Heroku uses Postgres, not SQLite 3. So we're going to put SQLite 3 into our development environment, and we're going to add the PG, which is a Postgres gem, and the Rails 12-factor gem to our production environment. Now at this point we're going to run bundle, and then we're going to commit the changes to our Git repository. Now if you don't want to install the production gems, the PG and the Rails 12-factor gem, or let's say you can't install the Postgres gem because maybe you need to install Postgres first, so what you could do is you could run bundle without production. And what this is going to do is going to say, well, if you're not using the production environment, like in this case, don't install production gems on your system. And that's fine. So you could do bundle without production, and once you do that, you'll actually see that there's a config file which is created in your .bundle directory in your top level directory that will now have this option that says bundle without production. So the next time, even if you don't specify this flag of without production, it will not try to install the production gems in your environment. Then we're going to commit everything. At this point we should be able to do git status. On my system, git st is just git status, it's just an alias. And then we should see that the working directory is clean. And we should be able to see that when you do ls, you'll see the top level directory of Rails, let's say the app directory, is at the top level of our Git repository. So now we're going to try to do Heroku login. We're going to put our Heroku credentials, email and the password, and then we could now run Heroku create to create the subdomain to which the app will be deployed. So in this case it's ireview-books. And then what happens is a new Git remote called Heroku is added to our Git repository. So if you've been pushing stuff to GitHub from this app, you'll now also have another remote to Heroku. So there's going to be a remote to origin, or whatever you called your GitHub remote, as well as the Heroku remote, which is your connection, your remote on Heroku. At this point, you should be able to do git push Heroku master. We're pushing from our master branch to Heroku master branch, and Heroku is the remote that we just created in the previous step. At this point, it will recognize that we're pushing a Ruby on Rails app. Then there is also a bundle install without development and test. So what Heroku is doing in turn, Heroku says, I don't really care what you guys used in your development or test environment. I only care about production environment, so I'm going to be installing the gems needed for a production environment on Heroku. And then at the end, you should see verify and deploy done, that it should indeed verify that the app is deployed. It's deployed to this URL here, ireviewbooks.herokuapp.com, and the repository URL is this one over here. Okay, so now we have our app on Heroku. It's not just localhost anymore, it's the actual app running on the internet. Now the problem is, if you now put in your credentials into, let's say, the Joe ABC123, and you try to say login, you're going to get this message that says, we are sorry, but something went wrong. If you're the application owner, check the logs, more information. Now, why is this happening? Well, this is happening because we deployed the app, but we haven't really pushed our database structure to Heroku. So to do that, we're going to run rakedb migrate, and then we're going to also run Heroku run rakedb seed, which will populate the information, the preliminary seeds file, the seeds.rb file, to Heroku. So when you run Heroku run rakedb migrate, you'll see something like this. The actual table is being created remotely on Heroku, and then Heroku run rakedb seed will populate your Heroku application, whatever is in your seeds.rb file. Now the message that I gave you before about something going wrong and check your logs. So if you do Heroku logs on the in the console, you should be able to see something like this where it says that undefined table error, reviewers does not exist. So that should give you a clue what's going on, that your reviewers table does not exist on Heroku and needs to be created with Heroku run regdb migrate. Okay, so at this point we have our application running on the web. We have iReview books, herokuapp.com. Things seem to be working. Now the problem is we're trying to create an application that's secure, and it seems to be secure that only certain users can get into their individual accounts. But the problem is that everything from a browser to the server is going in clear text. So what we should really be using, we should be using an HTTPS protocol, an SSL, to be able to communicate between the browser and the server. So again, once it gets to the server, you're okay in terms of being redirected to proper routes and things like that. But from the browser to the server and back, everything is going in clear text, and the connection between the browser and the server is not encrypted. So how do we fix that? Well, actually it's pretty easy. So in the production.rb file, which is underneath your config environments, so these are files that actually apply to each individual environment. So production.rb file applies to the production environment, and in there you'll see there's already an option that says config.forceSSL equals true. It's just commented out. So all we have to do is uncomment it, and this, as the comment says, will force all the connection to go over HTTPS, which is the SSL protocol. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say commit the change to Git repository, push it to Heroku, and then at that point what we're going to see is we're going to see that all our connections from a browser to our applications are going to now use HTTPS protocol and going to have this lock next to it. Now, in order to be able to use HTTPS and SSL, you need to have a certificate. Heroku, in this case, because you're using their subdomain and the actual domain is Heroku app, is just letting you piggyback on their SSL certificate. So that's why things just work. If you're going to have your own custom domain, example.com or abc123.com or something like that, then you have to figure out how to get your own certificate. Heroku, I believe, also lets you use the service of where they provide the certificate, but it's not free like in this case. It actually costs money. So in summary, we're going to use bundle or bundle without production if you don't need or can't install production gems on your local system. Then don't forget to run the db commands on the remote server after you deploy the application. And also remember to enable HTTPS protocol by saying config.forceSSL true, and that will force the connection to be SSL over HTTPS, not just regular HTTP.